There were several pivotal moments throughout my career that caused me to completely mistrust my agency and act on spirit that way. I've already shared one, and I'll share another one. Myself and a lieutenant were the subjects of the internal investigation. Um, this would have been about 2 years ago now, based off of an incident that happened 3 years prior to that. So this incident occurred about 5 years ago, but the internal investigation was conducted about 2 years ago. At the time, I was a brand new police officer, and this lieutenant was only a sergeant. We responded to a burglary in progress at a local law firm, which we determined was not actually a burglary. The burglar in this situation was a former detective with my agency and was now a private investigator for this law firm. I had no knowledge of this private investigator, had never seen him before, met him before, or heard his name before. Again, I was a brand new police officer, but this private investigator was well known within my department, and apparently there was a lot of drama between he and the administration or other officers within my agency. I didn't care to know at the time. I had no idea what the issues were, but I was made aware that day that there were still some deep-seated issues between our investigator and my administrators. So we decided this was not a burglary. Myself and another officer on scene did our investigation. It was not at all a burglary. We couldn't prove that it was a burglary. My sergeant was briefed on all the information we had. We were still attempting to follow up on other leads and speak with other people involved. But my sergeant instructed us what to do. We were going to document the incident and report as a non-crime related report and send this private investigator on his way. As this private investigator was preparing to leave the scene, a captain and a lieutenant from my department showed up on scene. I worked day shift at the time, so it was normal for captains and lieutenants to be around the department. They have their own radios they would listen to. So surely the reason they showed up to my investigation was because they heard over the radio who I was talking to, which was the private investigator. They would have heard his name said over the radio. It was within only minutes of the lieutenant and the captain arriving on scene that I was made aware that there were some issues between them and the private investigator. I was instructed to stand aside with the private investigator while my sergeant spoke with the lieutenant and captain. The lieutenant and the captain were speaking very loudly and angrily with my sergeant. I very vividly remember, I can still see how they were yelling and all three of them pointing fingers at each other. While the three of them were loudly arguing, I was several yards away with this private detective who was extremely angry. His face was red, he had spit coming out of his mouth as he yelled. He was yelling over the top of me towards this captain and this lieutenant yelling swear words at them and other things. They clearly did not like each other. Ultimately, this captain and this lieutenant made me write a citation arrest this private detective for burglary, even though it was not a clear burglary. My sergeant was very upset. He expressed this to myself and the other officer that was on the scene with me. But it was above his head, and I had to write this man a citation for burglary. I wrote my police report later that day, exactly how the incident occurred, and that there was not clear evidence of a burglary. I also put in my report how a captain and lieutenant arrived on scene. One thing I forgot to mention is that the mayor of the city actually also arrived on scene. That's how big of a deal this was at the time. There were other situations going on with the law firm But this was a really big deal, and I was thrown into the middle of it as a brand new police officer. The chief hands me an internal investigation letter and explains to me what's happening. I was being accused of falsifying a police report. Now, it wasn't normal for officers to be called in the chief's office for internal investigation notifications. Usually you're notified by a letter in your mailbox and an email. So it was really unusual that I was being called in the chief's office. But the chief was very kind. He explained to me why he was personally telling me about this internal investigation involving myself. And there was this undertone to the whole conversation. He knew it was BS, but it was just a process that I was going to have to go through. Throughout my conversation with the chief, he emphasized multiple times that he wanted me to look through my body cam footage from the day of the incident, which was 3 years prior. This wasn't usual. I've never been told so many times in one conversation to review my body cam footage for an internal investigation I have been investigated for. And typically you review your body cam footage the day of the investigation. That's how I have done it before with my attorney. We review the body cam footage right before we're about to interview with the agency. And that's something that the lawyer was telling me to do. And it's common sense to do. But it was just really odd that the chief kept emphasizing to go review my body cam footage. So, of course, immediately I went downstairs and pulled up my body cam footage from that day. All of my footage from that incident was gone. There were no tab videos. So I attempted to look up the lieutenant's footage from that incident, but all of his videos were gone as well. So I attempted to look up the second officer on scene with me, who had direct contact with the private investigator, and all of his videos were gone as well. What is interesting is that, as I mentioned, this case involved other people. There was the law firm, the attorney that owned that law firm, had a lot of stuff going on, and we had to attempt to interview him that day. We weren't able to. So, anyways, this was a scene with a lot of moving parts. There were other people being investigated, other officers involved that never dealt with the private investigator that I was dealing with and never came to that scene in that time. So what I'm trying to explain is there were really only 5 people that directly talked to this private investigator, which was myself, another officer with me, my sergeant, and the captain and lieutenant that came on scene later on. Only the body cam footage from the people that directly spoke with this private investigator were missing. Of the other 4 or 5 officers involved in this situation, all of their body camera footage was still available, was still tagged and able to be reviewed. But none of those people ever had direct contact with this private investigator. To my understanding, the only reason that I was being investigated or how this internal investigation came about was because the private investigator was going to have to go to court regarding this case. And